Hey, thanks for joining me on the Life Podcast, where you guessed it, we talk about life. My name is Austin, and I'm so excited that you are tuning in. This podcast exists to encourage you and walk alongside you as you experience life. So thanks for tuning in. Now let's get into today's episode. All right, guys, what is going on? I am so excited for today's episode. I believe this is going to be a good one for everybody listening, and I'm super pumped about the guest today. That music that you just heard on the intro here, as a matter of fact, was made by my special guest today. His name is Alex Valle-Lopez, and I've gotten to know Alex over the past 7 months as he just recently moved to Hermiston, the town where I live, and I'm super excited. So, Alex, go ahead, tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on. Alex. My name is Alex. And I just recently moved to Hermiston. I've been here about, 6-7 months now. Very interesting place. Very interesting choice.
Lots of stuff to do.
I work with you.
Yep.
So I get that distinct honor and privilege, I guess.
I guess you could say it's a privilege.
It is a privilege to work with Austin Naylor.
Yes.
So I moved out here in January. And, kind of was trying to get to know people, get to know the town. And then we got hit with COVID and it's been shut in since.
Yeah.
But, I work for our church here at Hermiston Assembly as the associate pastor. That basically means I do pretty much anything that needs to be done to make them, stuff move forward. So,
you're the go-to guy.
Yeah. I shouldn't say I just turned 30. I turned 30 back in February. And I have a dog now, so I'm fostering a dog.
Nice, dude. You're really doing it.
Shout out to Fuzzball Animal Rescue.
There you go.
That's where I got the dog from, and they're doing good work. And if you can foster a pet, do it.
Do it. That's awesome, man. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you hopping on today. And like I said, I've gotten to know Alex over the past 6-7 months, and him and I have had so many good conversations, so many times that we've talked where I just wish I was like recording on my phone, recording a podcast, because I just want other people to hear what we're saying, because I think it's good stuff. Not saying that we're the smartest guys in the world, but I think that you've said some pretty good things. Thanks. And I mean, not to brag or anything, but I think I've said some pretty good things. So, man, I'm super excited for today. And let me just introduce the topic real quick, and then we can get into it. So today, I'm going to title today's podcast this: How to Love My Neighbor in 2020. How can I really love my neighbor in 2020? Because here's the deal. I think that in 2020, we could all use a little bit more love. We could all use a little bit more unity. Every time I go on Facebook, every time I get on any social media platform, whether it be Twitter, Reddit, something, I don't know. There's so much negativity, so much division. And I think that we could really use a good conversation on what can we do to really unite each other. What can we do to really love each other in the midst of differing opinions, in the midst of an election that quite literally divides people. So that's what we're going to talk to today. How can I love my neighbor in 2020? And here's where I want the foundation to kind of be laid. In Matthew 5 in the Bible, verses 43 through 47, Jesus is given his Sermon on the Mount, and he says this: "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same, who are considered bad people back in Jesus' time? If you greet only your brothers, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same?" So here Jesus challenges people to really love your neighbors, and not just those who are like-minded, not just those. If you're a Republican, you're going to love more than just Republicans. If you're a Democrat, you're going to love people more than those who are Democrats. So, and that's just a crude example, I guess. But I really believe that we are living in a time where it would be so powerful that if we could really love those who thought differently than us, who look differently than us, who act differently than us, that would be something powerful, something beautiful. And again, if you've been on social media anytime in the last, 5 months or so, you've seen absolute mayhem and just crazy stuff. Black Lives Matter movement, all lives matter. The 2020 election's coming up, and that's very divisive. So anyway, today we're going to talk about ways that we can really, really love our neighbor. So without further ado, and like I said, Alex, we've had so many great conversations about a topic very, very similar to this. We've had kind of this exact conversation today. So Man, we're just going to get into it. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and yeah, I think it'll be good. So, guys, put the seatbelt on, strap in, and let's do it. So, Alex, let me ask you this. Do you have any examples from your life of a time that maybe you feel like you've loved your neighbor, or maybe a time that you didn't, or maybe even in your family? Maybe you can think of something like that. Just a time to get us going on this conversation.
Yeah, I think, well, for those who are not seeing on the video or whatnot, I'm Latino, obviously by my last name, Valle-Lopez. Latino. My descendancy is Salvadoran, so I'm actually 100% Salvadoran. Both of my parents are full native Salvadorans, and so it's been kind of the last couple of years, obviously, with the issues of race and issues of inequality and stuff like that, that it's really kind of been brought to the forefront of my own lens. One, because I've grown up here in the United States. I was born in LA, moved to Bellingham, Washington. If nobody knows where Bellingham is, it's 20 miles south of Canada, so you're basically Canadian.
Nice.
So, and I obviously, in growing up in the public school system as well, like everything I know about America and who I am as a person, comes from what I was learning. Obviously, I have stuff that was going on at home and whatnots, but I think for me, it really kind of came to a head a couple. I want to say about 2 years ago. One of my sisters, she and her husband were at the coast, and they were at a local Taco Bell, and my sister's mother-in-law and her mom. So that would be the mother-in-law's mother, so the grandma-in-law, I guess. Grandma-in-law. Grandma does not speak English, and so they were trying to order, and my sister's mother-in-law was translating for her what the menu was saying, and get this and that, and again, my sister was saying afterwards that there was a gentleman behind them, a Caucasian male that was behind them, and started basically berating them for speaking Spanish and saying,
"Wow,
obviously many people have heard the same story before of speak English, you're in America, all this, and it for me, I've always heard these stories in the context of happening to other people,
right?
But now that it actually happened to someone who I knew, especially like my sister, I don't know, it really kind of brought this to this idea of inequality and race and being looked down upon, very much to the forefront of just who, even myself and especially to them, and it's affected them, and just that conversation and from that, they had some words with the guy, and at the end, what I didn't know, and I didn't realize this until a couple weeks later, that the end of that story was that but just because at the moment it was so traumatic for them, that it was just they had to leave the area, they had to leave the restaurant, they didn't even stay. But what I was told later is that my sister's mother-in-law had a conversation with this guy, in which in that conversation the guy was able to kind of really put out really where this was coming from, the fear, this notion of like, I am now lesser of a person because I'm seeing a majority of you people, for lack of a better term.
Gotcha.
And so there was this, and for me, I remember my sister, she made a big post about it on Facebook, and just was sobbing and really was hurt by what she had experienced.
Right.
And in that same token, I was hurt by what she was going through because I wasn't there. I'm the oldest brother in the family. I felt like I wasn't there to protect them. And so since then, and obviously as the years have gone by, we've seen this escalation, and we've seen how racial inequality, social injustice has really is now up in the forefront. We're seeing the beginning of a new civil rights movement. There's no doubt in my mind that is happening here and now. And, I and one thing I can consistently remind myself of at this moment, this is not about my race per se. We play a part in it, but I never wanted. One thing I tell people is I never want to take away the fact that what is what the catalyst of this is the Black Lives Matter movement, you know, and that ultimately the focus is on our African American brothers and sisters that have gone through, you know, historically have gone through worse things that at least that I know of here in my own, you know, I'm always open to I'm getting exposed to new things that have happened even in my own country. That from oppression and stuff like that, social injustice. And so I don't want to take away from that, but I know that the conversation has been brought to the forefront. And
definitely.
So I think that's kind of where that idea of like loving thy neighbor, loving each other as you would want, you know, loving each other as you want to be loved. It's really hard to capture that now in this time. And so excuse me, we talk about, you know, what does it mean to really love thy neighbor? In a nutshell, it truly means, as Jesus put it, you know, loving the person you're communing with or the person you're with in the same way you would want them to treat yourself, is the golden rule. You know, as we know, you know, treat others the way you want to be treated. You know, don't raise hands if you don't want to get hands raised. You know, so it's like, don't throw hands is the term. But like it's very much how we want to be treated is how we should be treating others. And so that obviously that's very elementary. No,
but I mean, it's still so relevant.
Like
we're not even practicing that, I feel like, so much of the time.
Yeah. And there was this one thing that that really, it comes in loving thy neighbor really, and is how you love yourself. That is the key as well. How are you loving yourself? How is your soul? How are you doing? That then replicate how you're doing is how you're going to treat others.
That's
so
good.
if you're filled with anxiety, if you're filled with depression, if you're filled with different things, that is going to transcend into how you treat others. I heard a quote once that says, I have it here, I have it written here.
While you're looking for that, I do want to point out that I think it's very interesting that we don't. And we talk about, you know, Black Lives Matter. We talk about racial inequality and social justice because that's what we're seeing right now. And not that we just want to focus on that as we talk about loving our neighbor, but that really is the whole reason of this topic that I wanted to talk about, because I feel like there are so many things happening, and it's just exemplifying how we aren't loving our neighbor, how we really aren't treating people the way that we want to be treated. And I've heard this analogy, maybe you've heard it too, and I really I thought it was very great when people say things like, because there's like the Black Lives Matter and then there's the All Lives Matter, but the Black Lives Matter group will say, well, if there's one house on fire in a neighborhood, you're going to send the fire trucks to that house because that house is burning down. You're not going to go douse every house in water because all houses matter. You're going to go to the one that is burning down. And at this point in time, we see a people group who has been marginalized, who has been treated much differently than we would treat ourselves and treat those that look like us and think like us. So it's not that I want to just simply focus on this, and I do want to focus on how we can love our neighbor, but I want to focus on, like, right now, who is our neighbor that's hurting, that needs love? You know what I'm saying? And I think that I love the way, I love the story that you shared. So thank you for sharing that. And I believe that it's not real for many of us. Like you said, you didn't really experience it until that kind of happened in your sister's life, right? And for many of us, we see it on Facebook, but how easy is it to scroll past it and be like, oh, that's not real. Like, I'm not feeling it, therefore it's not real in my life. You know what I'm saying? So, like, how can we feel that empathy? How can we feel that compassion when we see somebody who's hurting, who's not getting the love that they need? We all have, I think of, back in health class, I learned of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I don't know if you've heard of that, but like the base, like, needs there's obviously the physical needs, you know, food, water, shelter, whatever. But like literally right after that is this need to belong, this need to be loved and to be accepted. And we're not doing that right now. So that is kind of the essence of this conversation. But you found your quote.
Yeah. And I think it's going to tie really well with what you're saying. Because that in itself is showing there's something wrong within us.
Yeah.
In that concept, if we can't treat our neighbor the way we want to be treated because we don't know how to treat ourselves.
Yeah.
The quote says this: "The way you treat your heart and soul is how you'll treat others."
Right.
So that goes back then to what are you feeding in your soul?
Oh, that's good.
And I know we're talking about, you know, the in this world of social media that we live in, what we're ingesting, what we're feeding ourselves will very intrinsically affect our soul and our heart, and that's gonna then a byproduct is it's gonna show in how we treat others. If I am unhealthy both in my soul and my mental health, Sydney last week, I mean, home runs after home runs of what she was saying in regards to how your own needs as far as your own mental health and stuff like that. If that is not doing well, you're not going to do well with others.
Yeah.
No matter, you can mask it as much as you can.
Yeah.
You know, shout out for the mask.
You can mask that. 2020.
Right.
Some of y'all been wearing masks this whole time.
I know, right? You know, and so, but at the end, we're gonna see the true side of you will always come out.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just part of life. And as you said, as we've talked, this whole season of quarantine and this whole season of being in lockdown has really brought up. Has brought out, you know, really what's in people's heart and souls.
Yeah, I think the United States in particular has lived in a very comfortable situation. And here's the thing: when you're comfortable, it's so easy to put on a mask and to fake it. It's so easy to just live day by day. But as soon as chaos hits, as soon as a problem arises, that's when your true self comes out. I've heard this quote. My stepdad used to say it to me all the time. He said, "Who are you? You are who you are when you think nobody's watching." Right. And I think in chaos and things like this, we tend to go like protect ourselves first. So and when it's us against everything else, we're gonna do what we need to do to survive, and that's really gonna show what's on the inside of us. Are we gonna be selfish and protect ourselves, or are we gonna truly love others? And I think it's interesting that you talk about that we can't love somebody else until we can love ourselves.
Right.
Because when Jesus was asked, what is the greatest commandment? Jesus says, well, of course, you got to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, mind, whatever. And then he says, and love your neighbor as who? As yourself. You have to love your neighbor as yourself. So Jesus is saying, listen, you cannot love others until first you love God. Right. And then you need to love your neighbors, but you have to love your neighbors as yourself. So love is not possible until you love until you love God first, then love yourself, and then love your neighbors. So if you're having a problem feeling compassion, if you're having a problem feeling empathy for other people, I would highly recommend that order of steps is out of whack for you. That you're either not loving God or you're not loving yourself. Therefore, you can't love anybody else. That's why you can't have two unhealthy people in a relationship, because it's not going to work. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So yeah, I think it's interesting that you bring that up.
Yeah, and as you said, you know, you can't learn to love others if you don't first learn how to love yourself. And I think, going back, I think social media has a huge part to play in it. You know, Sydney, sorry, I butchered your name, highlighted that very well last week in the sense of like, what we're feeding ourselves in social media, what we're feeding ourselves through what we're watching, what we're ingesting, really will affect. She said, you know, she has you stop watching or following certain people, stop muted things here and there, because it was affecting really her own outlook on herself, and that in itself turns into her own outlook on others. Right. And so, you know, and one of the, you know, as we kind of get more deep into this conversation, a lot of the topics I'm talking about right now come from a podcast I listened to a couple of weeks ago that really just has really driven this point home of how social media and loving our neighbors kind of go hand in hand in that relationship. And so I just kind of, as I'm talking about these things, I want to give credit where credit is due. This is a podcast from, you know, this person, Carrie Newhoff, who's kind of a leadership expert, both in the Christian world and outside Christian organizations. He had a podcast, I think episode 355 or something like that. He has a guy named John Eldridge that was on, who's again a Christian a Christian therapist, really well known in those circles. Again, and also in outside Christian circles as well. And so, excuse me. So what they talk about this idea of how social media has put us in a place that we were never really meant to be in.
Wow.
In the sense of how our souls need rest, how we need to disengage and disconnect.
Yeah.
Where social media, we've never been connected as much as deep as we are now. And that in itself is both a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
And so
I've heard sorry to cut you off, but I've heard someone say something similar along those lines, that as to why social media is kind of a curse in a sense, is because we were never meant to bear this much information. We were never meant to bear.
That was one of our conversations.
Yeah, we were never meant to bear so many other people's burdens. Yes, the Bible does say bear each other's burdens, but how many friends you got on Facebook? I got like 800. I don't think God meant for us to bear 803 burdens all on our own. You know what I'm saying? So
no, yeah, and we were we were never meant to carry the world's problems.
Yeah.
As individuals,
right?
We were never meant, it's this tsunami of information that we have access to instantaneously.
Yeah.
We can know exactly what's happening right now in Syria. We can know exactly what's the amount of COVID deaths around the world, in our state, in the United States. We can know about the right now the storms hitting Japan. I mean, the best example I can give right now is like the explosion in Beirut. Who has seen that video?
Yeah.
Or the multiple videos out there of this massive explosion in downtown Beirut. That when I look at it, I remember I was looking at it for the first time, and when the explosion happened, like my soul and every ounce of my being jolted, because I was not expecting this thing to come. Now, doesn't mean I'm not trying not to empathize with the things happening around the world.
Right.
But I have to understand that back, even for those that, I'm 30, so I still remember the time where information wasn't as instantaneous as it is now.
You're getting old, dude.
Right? You're right. Like I'm an old, I'm on the older spectrum of the millennial generation. We're the sage,
full of wisdom,
full of wisdom out here. But it's almost it's becoming the word I heard is becoming kind of this empathy overload.
Yeah. Because
we have access to so much information, and that empathy overload leads to that anxiety, because we're like, what can I do to make a difference here?
Yeah.
Well, then this thing can happen. Well, what can I do? Well, and then you just feel stuck because you feel like you can't do anything.
Yeah.
Because you're just overloaded, things that's happening all over the world. And so the human soul really was never meant to endure such constant streams of trauma happening all around. And that's obviously with social media and news cycles and stuff like that. That's what they're pushing. That's what we're pushing. We're pushing, like I'm a part of, like, that's what's being pushed to us is this is what's happening. These are the bad things that are happening. That's why everybody gets excited when, somebody posts a picture of a dog, because it's, and you see the post now,
it's
like, hey, in the midst of all the craziness that we're living, here's a picture of my dog.
Yeah.
Blink. And everyone's like, oh, that's the cutest thing ever. But it's like, why is that the outside of the norm of what we're used to?
Yeah.
And so
can maybe to translate this to loving our neighbors, I don't know if you're gonna get there, but I think that that we can't love all 803 of our friends on Facebook because we were never meant to, because we can have our close circle, and I think don't get me wrong, what I'm trying to say, like, we are supposed to love everyone.
Right.
Well, God says to love our neighbors, and we're going to do that. But there's a deeper connection with those closest to you. Right. And I'm friends with 803 people on Facebook. I don't know. I'm just making that number up. But like, I might talk to 12 of them on a weekekly basis. You know what I'm saying? Right. So like, how can I love 800 people well? I can't. I might be able to love a few well.
Yeah. And as you said, I don't think we're not pushing for the, just don't love anybody. We can't love everybody. It is true. There's a truth to that statement that we can't love everybody.
Yeah.
We can't, our souls cannot physically bear the heartache of the entire world.
Yeah.
That's why we have these villages we live in. The concept these guys talk about in this podcast is that the human soul is village sized.
Wow.
So, and there's, empirical data regarding, what does that mean? And so there's this concept called Dunbar's numbers. It's a sociologist who who studied like truly how many people can we interact with in our lifetime that we will have significant impact with, and the number came down to about 150.
Wow.
So if we think about the village, even in medieval times, villages were only ever about 100, 120, 150 at the most.
Yeah.
And that was it. That's all. You didn't know anybody outside that village.
Yeah.
And so,
dang, that's good.
So talking about the human soul is village size, it doesn't mean that we don't empathize with people, but if we start empathizing with everything and everybody,
right,
we are intrinsically gonna get worn out.
Yeah.
And then at the end, we're no use to anybody.
Oh,
we can't
man,
love
good.
our neighbor.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to figure out who exactly is my neighbor. And it goes back to even as we look at in Bible terms, when Jesus gave the Great Commission, after his death and resurrection, he says, go out, to the world, preach the gospel, start in your Jerusalem and Samaria and the rest of the world. So for me, I take that, what am I doing here in my community with the circle of friends I have right now? Like for example, like when I moved out here, the best example I can give is when I moved out here, January 15th.
Yep.
Started working, started doing stuff, trying to get to know people. It was really hard at first just because it was new and just trying to get my bearings about myself. I've moved from Salem at that time. And, when I look down my Facebook and Instagram, it's everybody from Salem.
Yeah.
And they're moving on with their lives and they're doing stuff. And I felt like I'm missing out.
Yeah.
I'm missing out. I'm really like, I'm not a part of it. So it's like there was a little bit of depression that first, I could probably say that first 2-3 weeks, it was really hard.
Yeah.
Because I'm still trying to kind of like stay connected with people, not realizing that now that I'm in a new area, I need to learn how to get rooted here and start connecting with people here. Not meaning that I don't see what's happening in with my friends that I still have that I'm connected to, but that's not going to be sustainable long term.
Right.
I need to start creating friends here, Yeah. And that's when I pulled you in. So like, you're my friend now, and you have no say in it.
Yeah, that's right. That's fine.
It's like Austin's like, okay. I never wanted to be your friend anyway.
All right, we're wrapping up. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, and that was it, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks. So it's just we get to these places as we're trying to stay connected with people and stuff like that. It's like we just wear ourselves out.
Yeah.
And so we get to this place where it's just empathy overload.
Yeah.
Where it's just you have so much of it that you're just like, I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah.
And so again, I'm bringing a lot of what Sydney said last week because I think it's still so relevant. If you haven't listened to that, you need to go back and listen to it.
Episode 3, a discussion on mental health. Go check it out.
Yes.
And then come back.
Yes, because Sydney really very palpable in some of the things that she said regarding social media and our mental health.
Yeah.
And so like probably April and May, I just had to step away from it.
Yeah.
I really had to just not focus on that as much. And that kind of started this deal where now I probably have in the year, I have probably 7 posts that I've made.
Yeah.
That I'm just not on it as much anymore.
Dude, I can't even remember the last time you posted something.
Right. I think I turned off my phone for this, but I think it was either for my sister's birth. Oh no, it was the comment. I took the comment photos. Yeah. I took comment photos. And so it's like I'll post stories every now and then.
Yeah.
But like it just hasn't been something that I've just like I need to let people know about what I'm doing, or because it almost became like a sort of validation for me.
Oh yeah.
Like if I can get the likes, as intrinsically these things do, that's what social media is. Like, hey, everybody, look what I'm up to here, right now.
Please give me validation.
Right. When I realized my validation has to come from my faith in God.
Yeah.
It has to come from, again, I am now, and then we got into COVID. I am now on my own, locked down with no physical connection with anybody whatsoever. Yeah. Outside from an online presence. Like the validation I was wanting to get from people, and so it wasn't fulfilling the void that I wanted to fulfill in me. Whereas okay, Lord, like what is it? How do I learn to be content in where I am right here and now. Yeah. To continue to do what you called me to do. Yeah. And through that process, which which again, it's an ongoing process. It's not something that, oh, here's a ticker. I'm still wrestling with it.
Right.
You know, I'm still trying to figure things out as far as, you know, where my sense of validation comes from. But I knew from the get-go it wasn't going to come from social media.
Yeah.
And in reality, it was hurting me.
Yeah.
You know, and so now that I've kind of stepped back into it in the last probably a month or so, that I've kind of crept back in and I realized real quickly how divisive it's become.
Yeah.
You know, in light of the protests, in light of the presidential election, in light of all these things. And so what Sydney said last week, as far as you just got to step away sometimes. You just got to learn how to empathize, but also how to make boundaries.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's super important.
Yeah.
But again, going back to this idea of the village, we're, you know, and again, we're not designed to have 20,000 followers.
Yeah.
We're not designed to have 2,000 followers or even 500 followers.
Bro, I got 20,000 followers on TikTok.
Right.
How are you going to say that?
Yeah.
No, I'm
so
just kidding.
again, and I know, and not saying that isn't a bad thing,
Yeah,
but
I'm just
again,
kidding.
meaningful relationship isn't going to come when you can't spend time with 20,000 people.
True.
You're going to wear yourself down.
Right.
And you're going to be toxic at the end.
Yeah. And
so
you will not be able to love your neighbor.
Yeah. And you're not. So now, you know, this idea that it's almost like this disconnect of social media of just being, hey, I'm okay not having to let everybody know where I'm doing, where I'm at. It's kind of liberating.
Yeah.
Because then I have stuff to talk about where people are like, oh, what you been up to the last couple of weeks? Well, I've been doing this. Oh, man, that's cool and whatnot. And and I'm learning this. And it's like, well, it's not just me on a picture. You know, here's what I've been doing. Not saying that ain't wrong or anything if you have far off relationships. Like even that, I've taken it off the public forum. Like I have, you know, message groups with my friends and family. I got where I'm just communicating to them because not everybody needs to know what I'm doing. You know, it's kind of that's my village per se. Like the cool thing about this village concept is the people that I have intrinsically made deep connections with over the years. Mm-hmm. We can be. I have a friend in he lives out in the Salem area. A few friends that live out in the Salem area that we won't talk or text for maybe a couple weeks at a time. Yeah, and it's like. Or if I go visit, like I haven't visited much in the valley because we haven't been able to travel. But the times that I've been able to go and visit, it's like picking up the conversation where I left off. Yeah, I love that because it's not this weird like, oh, what have you been up to? Or hey, you know, I haven't seen you forever. Like, yeah, we haven't seen each other forever, but the deep relationship is still there because it's been nurtured by time. It's been nurtured even just how I'm communicating to them. You know, so. So it can get to a place where it can get toxic, right? To where you're no good in loving your neighbor. Yeah, I love the idea of the village. You know, the close relationships, your community, your circle, and I think that kind of piggybacks into where I want to go next because I think this is going to be the meat and potatoes of the conversation right here, and I'm really excited to hear what you have to say about this. But Jesus says in that passage that I read earlier. He says, but I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. So, Alex, here's what I want to hear what you have to say. And we'll talk about it for a little bit. Who are, a couple questions. It's going to be multifaceted here. Who are our enemies? Right. And what does it mean to be persecuted? And I'll repeat these questions, don't worry. But what does it really mean to love my enemies? Because if we talk about this idea of the village, and keeping our village close and loving our village well, that's great. Yeah. But Jesus is now saying to love your enemies, to love people who don't think like you, who might hate you, who hurt you. How can I love those people outside of this context of the village, if you know if that makes any sense? Yeah. So the first question you talked about is who are our enemies? Yeah. I think in our idea, when we talk about enemies, we're talking about anyone who is a threat to our physical well-being. Yeah. But I it's much more deeper than that. Yeah. Not only that is a part of it, yes, but there's also those that are a threat to us for our psychological well-being. Right. Emotional well-being. Our haters. Yeah. You know, like you have people that are killing themselves online because of troll.
Yeah. Wow.
Like that. So it's the enemy. Our enemies are not just physical enemies. Like as we talking about in the Bible, at that time, in Israel, love our enemies. The enemy was the Roman oppressive rule.
Right.
And so out of that context, you also get that idea where Jesus is like, love your neighbor, love your enemies.
True.
Where he talks about later about like, if you're ordered to carry a Roman soldier's gear for a mile, carry it 2 miles.
Yeah.
Not as a way of like sticking it to the man, but as saying, okay,
like I actually love you.
Yeah, that I'm going to carry 2 miles, and so so how do we love our enemies? We have to, and it goes back to the empathy.
Yeah.
Because enemies are usually people that you know.
Yeah. Wow. Say it, dude.
Enemies are rare unless you're online all the time and that's where you live.
Yeah.
Most of your enemies are people that you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so it goes back to empathizing. Again, I'm no good to an enemy or a non-enemy if I'm not doing good myself.
Yeah.
So how do I create that space at the table to where my enemy can say, okay, there's something more behind your attack on me.
Yeah.
One, because I know for a fact that I'm not out to do people harm.
Right.
So when I have someone who doesn't agree with me or doesn't like me or wants to do me harm, like, don't get me wrong, there are people out there that just want to see the world burn.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not
that's not you.
I'm not oblivious to the fact that there are bad people out and about that won't think twice about doing us harm. But I think in the sense here, it's like people who just may not think like you, may not like you for who you are as a person.
Yeah.
And talk behind your back or talk smack or your hate or whatever.
Yeah.
You know them, so how we empathize with them, where it's that coming, again, going back to Sydney's conversation.
Yeah.
I can't not talk enough about that conversation where she says, you have to learn how to empathize.
Yeah.
She made this great statement about her family, which I thought was really amazing, just the vulnerability she brought, talking about how she and her dad don't see eye to eye on things. And they fight. She didn't say, oh, we have disagreements. She said, we flat out fight.
Yeah.
And so that's a big word.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, she can see, her dad is her enemy. I think sometimes the enemy, our enemies, when we think about enemies, we're thinking about people that, want to do us physical harm, but we don't think about those that know us the deepest, know us to our inmost being, and yet can use those things to do us harm. Yeah. And usually that's in your family, that's in your very close relationships. Wow. And so these relationships, deep relationships that you have, can instantaneously, at a moment's notice, turn into a fodder for an enemy. Yeah. And so and so how do we pray for them? How do we do it? Again, it goes back to, how are you treating yourself? Yeah. How are you praying for yourself? Yeah. How are you seeing yourself? Yeah. And how are you then treating the person who may not look at you the same way? Yeah.
I think of a story in one of the disciples. I think it might have been Peter. I can't remember, but one of the disciples says, "Hey Jesus, this village is really, really bad. You want us to just cast down fire and destroy this whole village?"
That's such a wild story.
But they would never pray that for themselves if they were ever doing anything wrong, right? You know what I'm saying? And Jesus is like, no, we're not gonna do that. Right. And
time out.
It's like we would pray for blessings for ourselves, but curses on everybody else. Right. But Jesus is saying, listen, pray. I love what you just said. How are you praying for yourself? If I'm gonna pray for blessings for myself, man, I better be. Jesus is saying you better be praying for blessings for your enemies as well. Right. And man, that's
because it's this concept of when we talk about being human beings, we are created in the image of God. Yeah. That's a central aspect of our faith, that all human beings are the image of God. And so to wrap our minds around that concept is, okay, if I am a person who is going to show grace, who's been shown grace, I have to show grace. Wow. And I have to continue to show grace, regardless of what the other person is doing to me. Yeah. Because then in that, we will see the soul break. Because whatever the oppressor's doing is a response to whatever they're dealing with in their own life. Yeah. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
so if you're hating on me and I've done nothing to you, or maybe I did something that, put you the wrong way,
Yeah.
then I need to figure out, okay, what was it? If I apologize and
Yeah.
set the record straight, or, clear the air, but yet you're still hating on me, then I know that I still have to treat you with loving kindness and respect.
Yeah.
And know that that I leave blessed, because I'm not allowing that hate to really get to me, because it has nothing to do with me. And
Right.
it's like it's reframing.
Wow.
That it's reframing the hate.
Yeah.
It's like, as we see it online, as we see it in what's going on in our world, like hate going both ways, like, because it's not because people, how can I hate a random protester
Right.
down the street who I don't know,
Never
and
even
all
had a
I hate,
conversation.
and I can abhor them for whatever they're holding, or the sign, or whatever they're holding, or they're holding
Yeah.
their guns, or what, like, people hate each other because of that. People
Yeah.
are killing each other over it. Strangers.
Yeah.
Ain't no one sitting at the table to figure this stuff out.
Yeah, man, Alex, you and I have had so many conversations, and we've had conversations about this idea of we need to make space in our lives at this metaphorical table. We need to make space for our enemies to sit down with us. Did Jesus not sit with the tax collectors? Did he not sit with the Samaritan woman at a well, who people quite literally outcasted, said that they weren't even, they thought of them as less than people.
Right.
But Jesus is going to these people and making space for them, and hearing what they're saying. The Bible doesn't explicitly say this, but when you go to have dinner with somebody, odds are you're conversing like we're conversing right now, and Jesus is listening to them. What we need to do in today's society, which I think you're getting at, is we need to sit down and have conversations like this with people who think differently than us, who look differently than us, because how can we have an enemy that we've never even sat down with and talked with? You did say we could have enemies close to us, and I agree with that, but I think in today's society, we think that we have a lot more haters or enemies than we really do, because an enemy to me, if I'm a Republican, is somebody who's a Democrat. If I believe in all lives matter, which I don't, well, I believe that all lives matter, but hear me out, I believe that Black lives matter. But there's this idea that opposition is an enemy, which isn't true. Could I go as far as to say that we've kind of gone soft in 2020?
I think a lot of people take it personally.
Yeah.
We take a lot of things as a personal attack.
Right.
Where in fact it's the ideology being attacked.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, like, opinions and ideologies are just that.
Oh.
They're opinions and ideologies.
Yeah.
Formulated by how we were raised. I have opinions on stuff based solely on how I was raised in my home. The things that I went through, that I experienced. You have opinions of things that you went through and stuff, and so all these external and internal things that are happening are formulating our opinions of the world. Yeah. And again, it goes back to, what are we ingesting? Yeah. If I'm ingesting a bunch of conspiracy theories, guess what I'm going to be? A conspiracy theorist. Yeah. If I'm ingesting all Fox News, guess what I'm going to be? A Fox News guy. If I'm ingesting all of CNN, I'm going to be all CNN. Like, to me, like, when it goes back down to that, and so in this concept of the table, again, Jesus, we as Christians, especially, I forgot to mention this at the beginning. I'm a licensed minister. I'm a pastor. We're pastors. Yeah. That's kind of what we do as our job. But we are very much, in a sense, at least for me, I find myself consistently having to work with two different people. Yeah. Or even sometimes 3 or 4 different types of people with 4 different types of opinion. That's exhausting. Yeah. That's exhausting to have to, like, okay, you have this opinion. This other person who is also a Christian has a very different opinion. This other person who's also a Christian has a very different opinion. And I have to pastor them all. Yeah. We have to, okay. And yet we're asking them, hey, let's sit at the same table. Let's talk about our commonality in Jesus. Yet all of us have these very intrinsic views on things that we will not be moved. Yes, some of them are super biblical and super and yes, they have their merits in Scripture and whatnot. Anything can. And so when we sit at the table, we have the way I've come to understand it is I don't sit at the table as a representative of Jesus. I don't sit at the table of sinners as a representative of Jesus, because Jesus is the one at the head of the table. He's already there.
Yeah.
I sit at the table as a person whom the table was created for.
Wow.
Let me say that once again for the guys in the back.
Dude, I got goosebumps.
I sit at the table as one from whom the table was created for.
Yeah.
I am a sinner just as much as the person to my left, to my right.
Yeah.
And sometimes we as Christians, we like to put ourselves at the head of the table.
Wow, dude.
Thinking that we own the table. And that's not it. Jesus is the one who owns it. And that's why he's so controversial.
Yeah.
Because who did he invite to the table? The tax collectors, the prostitutes, the sinners, the worst of the worst, the outcasts. So imagine, again, going back to the village concept, Jesus did not sit with the village elders. He sat with the village outcast.
Dude.
Like, if there's only 150 people in the village and 100, the person number 148 to 150 are the ones that are just the worst, he was going for 148 through 150.
Yeah.
He wasn't sitting with number one, you know? The table was also made for number one, as it was made for 150.
Yeah.
But yet, it was the way he invited people to the table was so controversial that those that were in status and whatnot wouldn't, out of their own pride and ego, commune with that.
And here's what I think it is. Last week we talked about, guys, you really got to go watch last week's episode. We keep referring to it, but there's this idea that we need to separate the issue from the person.
Yeah.
And because when we see, for example, in Jesus' time, when they saw a prostitute, that's all that person was. They weren't real people. To them, they weren't a real person. And let me give you a real life example of this. In the foster care system, foster families will foster a child, and oftentimes it's hard to see the foster child's real biological parents as people, because we don't get to see them too often, and we just assume, oh, they're so bad because their children's in the system. So all we see them as a drug addict, or we see them as a bad person, but in reality that's not true. They are real people, and as soon as we begin to see people as just that, as a person, as somebody who is made in the image of God, then our viewpoint shifts, I think, because right now we're seeing issues, and we're seeing viewpoints, and we're seeing perspectives, but we're not seeing people. Yeah. And that's a real problem, because Jesus didn't tell us to love our issues, to love perspective. He told us to love people, not to love what they do on a Saturday morning in their free time. You know what I'm saying?
Behind every Black Lives Matters poster is a person.
Exactly.
Behind every AR-15, there's a person.
Yeah.
Behind every police badge, there's a person.
Yeah.
Behind every funeral of someone murdered is a person.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, like, there are people behind these things, and if we are going to really be who we're called to be as peacemakers, as people called to live in peace with one another, we have to start. As you guys just hit the nail right on the head on that. We have to see these issues. We have to see the people behind the issues,
right? And
we have to know that the people behind every stance are going through stuff.
Yep.
Where we don't sit on this pedestal of our own ideas.
Yeah. All right. So with all that being said, this kind of leads into my final question, and we can have a little bit more conversation about it. Is this question right here? How can I live unoffendable? Because we live in a time where, like we've said already, that people's opinions offend us, people's thoughts and ideologies offend us, and we begin to see those people as our enemies because we're now offended because somebody thinks differently than us. But I believe that Jesus is calling us to live a life, not just myself, but anybody who professes the name of Jesus. And it would, even if you don't believe in God, if you're not a Christian and you're listening to this, like, how much easier would your life be if you lived unoffendable, if people's thoughts and ideas didn't bother you because it was different than yours? Because, man, we're living in a time where everybody feels that they have their own truth, when everybody feels that they are right. But that's not everybody
Right.
gets to be right. Not everybody gets to say that their way is true.
Right.
And I think it's important to understand this concept that we can live an unoffendable life. So I don't know if you have any thoughts to this question, but how can I live unoffendable? How can I really like just brush off? Because I'm the type of person, let me just say this, my wife hates it. I make so many jokes in a day, and I don't often think about like how that might make somebody else feel, because if somebody else were to make jokes to
Right.
me, I would be like, oh, it's a joke, it's funny, it's not gonna hurt my feelings. But there are other people out there whose feelings might get hurt. And I'm not like saying like mean jokes or racist jokes or anything like that. I'm just, sometimes they might come off as rude or whatever, and they might offend somebody, because I don't think about that, because I just don't get offended. I mean, it takes a lot to really just upset me and offend me. So how can we live a life that is unoffendable?
Well, first you have to choose to live unoffendable.
Yeah, say it.
It's a choice. You have to say, you have to take whatever is causing you offense and realize, okay, is it causing me offense because I just don't like what they said,
Yeah.
or is it because it reminds me of something that's happened to me? And so not saying that we're just going to let people walk all over us.
Right.
There are, as we see now, people are sick and tired of being offended against.
Yes.
In the way we're seeing social justice, racial injustice happen.
Yeah, no, I hear that.
And so how to live unoffendable
In a healthy way.
in a healthy way, it's very much choosing, not, again, going back to, as we said, we don't take things personally, empathizing
Yeah.
as to why this person said an offendable thing and where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And I think, and also kind of just avoiding it.
Oh, yeah. Good.
Not in an unhealthy way, but if I don't need to get, if someone's so intrinsically attached to their viewpoint
Yeah.
that no matter of truth or hard empirical evidence is going to change them,
Yeah.
I'm not even going to engage with them.
Yeah. You know that like we don't have to comment on every Facebook post we see.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Again, I don't have to, and neither do I need to follow everybody who wants to follow me.
Yeah.
Neither do I need, it's okay to unfriend people. It's okay to
Yeah.
mute people. It's okay not to be like
Right.
completely connected with everybody and hear everybody's opinions on
Yeah.
the matter. Because here's what as we see now, even the conversation I even had last night with a few people, it's like, we have this idea coming at us. We have this idea coming at us with this idea. We have this thought, this
Right.
theory, this and it's like, well, then what's real?
Right.
What is true? And it goes back to, okay, I need to pull away. I need to look at what I'm living in what is beneficial to the people I'm surrounded with, to my village.
Yeah.
What is my village saying about these issues, about this matter? And then how do I live in such a way that we're building each other up and not tearing each other down?
Right.
And that is in that posture of living unoffendable, in the sense of like, okay, you just said something to me that kind of just I don't know. Then is it because of just, again, as I said, how do I answer back? Do I just need to just take it,
Right.
chew on it, and then come back and say, hey, listen, what you said, this is how I felt about it.
Yeah.
Because for me, like, I'm a peacemaker. For those who do the Enneagram stuff, I'm a 9. I'm a straight up 9.
Yeah.
To a fault. Like, people can walk over me sometimes, and I won't realize that until months later.
Yeah.
I'm like, you used me, man, and then let myself be used.
Right.
But and it's that same way of like, walking unoffendable does not mean I need to let people walk over me.
Right.
It's also realizing if something does offend me, is being able to empathize as to the person who said the thing and say,
Yeah.
hey, what you just said, I didn't appreciate, and this is why.
Yeah.
And then go from there. If the person realizes, oh, I'm sorry. One thing is, again, and yet in that the person might feel like they're getting personally attacked.
Right.
That's a whole other issue.
Yeah.
Because then just because we attack your ideology doesn't mean I attack you as a person.
Yeah.
And so
I think in this instance, we're simply focusing on ourselves. Like how other people respond, we cannot control. But like knowing that you did all you can do, and I think it's important to say too, and this idea of living unoffendable, that it doesn't mean that you can't feel hurt. It doesn't mean that that you can't be, I guess, offended by something. But living unoffendably is really dictated by your response to an attack. It's really dictated by how you I guess again, how you respond to somebody hurting you or persecuting you or whatever. Because like I said, we all have feelings, we all have emotions. We're going to feel things. Like we can't stop ourselves and be callous to everything. So it's okay to feel things. Cause I think when we talk about being unoffended, we're just like, oh, that means I'm going to be callous and I'm not going to feel anything. No, you're probably going to feel hurt. You might even cry, and that's okay. I cry sometimes. It's okay. But it's all about how you respond, because in our response is, I think it's Jesus that says it's not what goes into a man that defiles him, but it's what comes out.
Right.
And that's important, because we can take in so much information in a day, but what comes out is who we are.
Yeah.
What goes in is what everybody else is saying, what everybody else is doing. But what comes out again is who we are. So
yeah, and that goes back to what we were saying. We have to be careful what we're even putting in.
Exactly.
Because what comes out is a result of how we filter what is coming in.
Yes.
And so the viewpoints I have and the ideas I have, or the processes I think we should be doing, is a result of what I'm allowing in.
Yeah.
I'll be the first to admit there are people that I cannot follow or talk to.
Yeah.
Because immediately the conversation is hijacked to whatever their ideology wants to be. Mm-hmm. And there's this self-centeredness about it that, as much as I wish I can be like, yeah, I want to sit and listen, but I realize if it's your way or the highway kind of a deal, like what's the point?
Yeah, seriously.
Well,
there's nothing worse than talking to somebody who is not open to changing their mind, or not even open to hearing somebody else say something.
Right. And I think a lot of us in both, in Christian circles and outside Christian organizations, like I've worked outside the church. I've done ministry. I've done stuff outside the church as well. Like, people want to be heard. People want to be validated.
True.
I guess the best interactions I've had with people in my professional career life, I should say, are people that have completely chewed me out. Yeah. They're just going at it and telling me the what for, and I'm there just kind of like, okay, cool. Yeah. But I realize if I keep my cool and if I maintain my composure, and which is a hard thing to do anyway, depending on your personality type. But the peacemaker is very easy. I'm just like, okay, this is beyond. This is not just about me. You're angry at something else. We're gonna get to this. I'm happy. I'm happy to be the punching bag, man. And so that's awesome. But then afterwards, I remember I was interacting with this particular individual, and they were just our interaction was very sour in the sense of just he felt. It just was unleashing on me. Not because of who I was as a person, but who I represented at that time. And so afterwards, once he got done with his rant, I explained to him, this is what we need to do. This is how things are going to get done. Yeah. There is no way out of this. This is just, it is what it is. Yeah. And I'm sorry that this is how it's making you feel. And I'm going to make this process as painless as I can, but it needs to happen. And then through that, as I empathize with the person's pain and their hurt about the matter that at hand, and I'm kind of speaking about this cryptically because I have to. Yeah. At the end of that interaction, they left with this idea of that I'm not a bad person. Yeah. That what I represent ain't a bad thing. And that as I stood there and listened to them at the end, he was appreciative, even saying, "Hey, wow, thank you for letting me rant." And he apologized, like, "I'm sorry, I just went off on you. Yeah, I'm really stressed." And it was there that I realized this is where it's coming from. You're stressed, you have anxiety, right. You don't like that you have to be doing that. We are interacting at the moment. Yeah. And so it's like, okay, I get that. It's not my fault. I could have been very offended by getting yelled at, and as many people would likes to get yelled at. Yeah. But I realized really quickly in that what I was doing there is like, okay, if that's who I need to be right now, but it's gonna get me to where I need this to go, then so be it. Yeah. And in that, I realized that a lot of us, when we're in these places where just our emotions are just especially the cool thing about online, the cool and bad thing about online is that we're all anonymous. Yeah. We can be whoever we want to be. What I post on Instagram is a snapshot. Yeah. A 0.001 millisecond snapshot. Wow. Of my actual life. Yeah. And it's the best snapshot the best 0.1 millisecond.
Yeah. That's how we all want our dating
snapshot.
profiles to look.
Yeah. I'm built and super muscular, but
I don't have one of those. I'm married.
right? Exactly. No, and I'm not built and muscular. That's again, right? Like, but again, we're only showing people what we want them to see.
Yeah.
But then again, we're so comfortable in letting people know our opinions online.
Yeah.
We will. There are some things that people say online that they would never say in person.
It's true. But
we are starting to see the change where people are becoming emboldened to say the things that they would say online to people in person. And this is why we're seeing, this is my opinion, Alex Valle-Lopez's opinion.
Yeah.
This is why we're seeing such divisiveness.
True.
Because we've taken the anonymity of online and what the keyboard warrior of, I don't like this because I'm a troll, to actually becoming real life trolls.
Yeah.
And that's unhealthy. Because and again, it goes back to what we're ingesting online.
Yeah.
We are becoming whatever we're ingesting online. Right. And so to live going back to our unoffendable question, it goes back to, I have to choose not to be offended by everything I see, or else, my gosh, I won't sleep at night. And then I have to empathize with people who are offending me. Yeah. To the point to realize that it may not be their issue may not be with me. It might be with something else.
Yeah. Let me give an example to that because for those of you who know me, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm a waiter at Denny's. And
right.
Dude, I don't know what it is, but people feel like it's just like they can just take out their bad days on a waiter or waitresses. Yeah. And anyway, as a waiter, let me give you a specific example because this just really like grinded my gears. Is there a ground my gears?
No, grind your gears. Yeah.
This was past tense. It grinded my gears.
Ground. It grinned.
No. Either way, I was just like so
English
frustrated.
Second language.
Yes. Hey, it's my first language. I still struggle. Anyway, a couple weeks ago, I was helping out a customer. They were one of my tables. I was waiting on them, and it was a regular, a lady that has come in all the time. I've served her many times. We've had great conversations. We've talked, like everything was fine. But on this particular day, she must have been having a bad day, and man, she really took it out on me. So at the end of her meal, I went to go check on her, give her a check, make sure everything was okay. And I said, "Hey, how was everything for you today?" And she says, "It was terrible." And I said, "Okay," because sometimes I just don't know what to say when people say that. And I said, "Okay." And she just goes off on me. She goes, "First of all, I had to ask another one of the waitresses to grab me a sauce. And then the host refilled my water for me." And let me tell you, I know when I do a bad job on like waiting a table, like it wasn't like super busy. People are so like subjective. They want, like, some people want to be checked on 5 times during the meal. Right. Some people want to be checked on once and only once. So it's hard to tell sometimes, but, this lady's like, "And then when you came to check on us, I had food in my mouth, so I couldn't answer." And then she goes, "And I just want you to know that I'm not going to give you a tip today. I'm going to tip the waitress who brought me my Tabasco sauce, and then I'm going to tip the host who refilled my water, but I'm not going to tip you." And in that moment, I thought to myself, Austin, how badly do you need this job? Number one. And then I thought, Austin, she's probably having a bad day. Like, it's fine. And I said, "You know what, ma'am, I am so sorry that you had a bad experience." And then she said this, which really just threw it over the top. She said, "And you've been our waiter before, and you've been really, really, really good. Like, we love having you serve us. But today was just terrible."
And you missed the mark, brother.
Dude, I missed the mark. And in that moment, I thought to myself, Austin, like, you're more than a waiter. Like, it's okay. Right. And she was obviously having like a rough day. Right. And she just needed to take it out on somebody. And I don't mind being the punching bag for people having a bad day. But had I been offended and like, she attacked me being a waiter, she didn't attack who I was as a person. Right. She attacked me being a waiter. And I had to recognize that she was attacking what I was doing, not who I am. Oftentimes we think people are attacking who we are when they're really attacking our ideology, our thoughts, our opinions. And that's a funny story, but how many of us would have absolutely lost it on this older lady? And she was an older lady. For those of you who are probably thinking, she's probably an old white lady. She was. It's fine. But anyway, that was just one experience I had. And
no, it reminds me of, and here's the thing about living unoffendable. You have to acknowledge people's pain.
Yes.
It reminded me of another story. I work as a a lot of my jobs have been as a audio person. Like, I work professionally as
audio engineer.
As an audio engineer. And I work for this particular organization, and I had a lady complain about how loud it was. It was a you know.
Yeah.
And as is any audio engineer would tell you, you always have people who complain.
Right.
And so her complaint was based out of a medical issue she had with some stuff that she was going through. And so I remember I said, I'm so sorry that this made you, that what I'm doing makes you feel this way. I have my parameters that have been set, explaining to her, you know, I'm sorry that if that you feel this way, you know. And my boss quickly came up to me afterwards, because she had emailed my boss about it too. And he sat me down and said, hey, Alex, so here's something I want you to learn. Not because I'm chastising you, because I think this is going to be beneficial for you. And it's going to help when you're trying to steer people towards something.
Right.
The way you apologized was wrong. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Apologize again. Like, I'm sorry. What was it? Like, just like you said that the way you told her that what you did, that you're sorry that what you did made her feel this way. Yeah. Or cause uncomfortableness in what she was experiencing. I want you to acknowledge her pain. Yeah. In a sense of, I'm sorry that what I did caused this. Yeah. You know,
not just that you didn't like it.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying though.
Yeah,
I think
that's so like it's not so much of saying I'm sorry that you feel I made you feel that you feel about this,
because you're like putting the blame on them that it's their fault that you're having to apologize.
It's not my fault that she had a medical issue. It's not my fault. Yeah. What I was doing was amplifying, for lack of a better term, the pain she was dealing with at the moment. Yeah. And at the end, it was resolved and we were able to kind of accommodate something for her. Yeah. But it was such a learning lesson for me because I have to validate people. People's pain need to be validated because it's coming from somewhere. Yeah. And because I just end up being the punching bag doesn't mean that like I'm sorry or I end up being a trigger for them in some way, shape, or form. For me, it's well, I'm sorry that that you feel the way you feel. No. I'm inviting you to the table. Yeah. I'm inviting your pain to the table, and I want to listen. I want to learn. Yeah. And I want to hear why you're going through this and why am I the focus of your attention in this particular way. And I'm sorry that if I'm doing something that is amplifying that pain. Yeah. And so I hope that makes sense in the way of that. But it's very much people we're all hurting in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. Just because we're pastors or because we live different lives. Excuse me, we're all hurting. Yeah. We're all going through something. And the more we empathize with those close village people that we have, with people in our village, the better off we're going to be. Because, and also, again, we talked a lot about social media. We talk a lot about that. We need to disconnect. Yeah. What Sydney said last week, again, bringing her up, we need to just disconnect sometimes. Yeah. We need to set those boundaries. We need to set those timers. Yeah. We need to rest from it, from being connected all the time. Yeah.
I feel like it's because our social media feels like we're resting when we're on it. Right. Social media is not. It's not. You're just ingesting more. And like I remember a time where as a kid growing up again in Bellingham, Washington. In the late 90s, it was very much a carefree. Like I didn't have a phone. Yeah, I'm 8 years old. Like every 8-year-old now probably has a phone. Of some sort. True. I had nothing at that time, and we lived at the edge of town. And I remember we would get we lived in some apartments at the edge of town, and we would get lost with the neighborhood kids and go into the woods. Yeah. Now. I'm talking about the woods in my 8-year-old mindset. Like, the woods, it's a big, scary, it's probably 2 acres of wooded area. But we would be there until late at night. Yeah. And then come back when it was dark out and, it's we went home. Yeah. We weren't as connected as we are now. Right. And we don't need to be as connected. It is okay to delete your Instagram, to delete Facebook, to delete Twitter.
your life is going to move on. Like
true.
that's something I'm contemplating.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm like, shoot, like,
Yeah.
but yet what's the held back?
Fear of missing out, man.
Exactly. It's the FOMO, you know, and granted, yeah, there's some stuff that, there's important information out there that you need to know. And you need to set up yourself in such a way in which you can get that relevant information that is important to you. But again, we're not, as we said before, we shouldn't be subject to the heartache of the whole world.
Yeah.
Because again, we're going to wear ourselves down.
It's not good for us. It's not
and
good
we
for
need
others.
we need to and disconnect, and we slow down. Like if I were to take 30 seconds right now and just have everybody breathe for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Like
just in through the nose, out through the mouth.
Into the nose, out through the mouth. Half of your listeners right now are going, what the crap are you doing? Like, move on.
Haven't even slowed down for 30 seconds.
Like, let's go. Like, we need to understand the pace of life 100 years ago, 150 years ago,
20 years ago,
20 years, 3 miles an hour.
Yeah. Compared to what we're doing now.
Why 3 miles? Well, because that was the pace of walking.
Yeah. No cars.
Yeah. I mean, Jesus' time, we talk about how Jesus spent time. Like we look at the Bible, we read as
you know what Jesus did? He spent hours in the morning praying.
Yeah.
We spend first thing we do when we get up, man. First thing I did this morning when I got up, dude, I check my Facebook, check my TikTok, check my Instagram. Yeah. Jesus gets up in the morning and prays.
Yeah.
So
it's and even just how he traveled.
Right.
You know, we read in the Bible that, you know, from Jerusalem to Galilee, Jesus went from Jerusalem to Galilee. And that's it. That's a sentence.
Yeah.
We don't realize that sentence is 3 days long.
Right.
It takes about 3 days to travel that far.
Yeah.
In those 3 days, he's resting.
Yeah.
He's
Wow,
interacting with his guys, with his disciples. He's rejuvenating himself for what is to come next, you know? And in that same, you know, when I travel to go visit my family in Salem, you know, it's 3.5 hours now. Those 3.5 hours, like I make time to like not listen to the radio, and just be centered and be focused and just kind of sort through and reset. Yeah. You know, and then on the way back, sort through and reset. And it's funny to me. It's like, well, that's just 3.5 hours of driving. Obviously, I'm not just mindlessly wandering.
Yeah, that's good. We want you to pay attention on the road.
Right. Yeah, pay attention on the road. But in that same token, like we need those periods of rest. Yeah. We don't need everybody to be reaching out to us all the time. Yeah. It's okay. I don't have to answer every text message that comes in at the moment. Yeah. I don't have to respond to every meme that's sent my way. True. I don't have to. You
send me a lot of memes.
I do. That's.
It's all right. I always like them for you.
Yeah. So, but in that same token, we do need to disconnect. Yeah. Because I think in that, when we disconnect from the internet and we connect to our community. Yeah. In what's going on with our neighbors, with our village, we will then understand what our village needs.
Yeah, and you need to know what they need to love them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and in that, we will learn how to love our neighbors if we get to know our neighbors. Yeah. As I said, you know, we live in a society, true, that there are people out there that wishes to do us harm. That's always going to be it. Yeah. But in that same token, if we're not making efforts to really love our neighbors and really get to know them as people, not behind the banners or the guns they stand behind but as people, we will intrinsically come to understand that we have more in common as far as what we want to accomplish in life than whatever ideology we stand behind.
Yeah. And there it is. Boom. Roasted. No, just kidding. Anyway, Alex, this has been fantastic. Yeah. This has been amazing. We're going to have to bring you back for a part 2. Yeah. And let me just say this. This is the longest podcast on the Life Podcast, episode number 4, How to Love Your Neighbors in 2020. Alex, you brought the heat today. Thanks, you so much for coming on. And guys, if you have not yet done so, I would appreciate if you subscribe to the podcast. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, if anybody uses that. YouTube as well. Go subscribe, leave a comment. It helps. Share this with your friends, guys. Get the words out, because I believe this podcast can change our perspective and change our life. So thanks for coming to the podcast, guys.